listening to the Top Music Guitar Podcast, the show for guitar teachers to learn about the craft of teaching great guitar lessons that students love. If you're looking to start or expand your studio and make guitar teaching your full-time dream job, you've come to the right place. Each week, you'll get to hear from some of the top guitar teachers from around the globe and get their best tips and experiences so you too can build your own dream studio. I'm your host, Michael, and I've founded one of the top guitar schools in Australia, written a best-selling curriculum, and I mentor guitar teachers. I'm excited to share my expertise with you and the wisdom of all the experts we interview. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Let's get into it. Hello and welcome to the Top Music Guitar Podcast. Today I've got a real treat for you, a special guest, someone in the Melbourne music scene who is very, very well known, both as a tremendous player on guitar and also as a teacher and educator. And that is a great friend of mine and something I want to do even more stuff with in future. And that is Mr. Jack Pantazis. Jack, welcome to the Top Music Guitar Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Michael. Thanks for the introduction. That's very kind of you.
So I first met Jack, I think, in my Year 12 VCE exam. I didn't know him back at the time, but when I come and got lessons with him just in the middle of COVID when I needed some help with my jazz playing, I've gone, hang on, this guy looks pretty familiar. And, I reckon that's where I had you, Jack, in my VCE exam probably about 12 years ago.
And I hope that it was an experience that didn't leave you scarred.
Oh, it wasn't you that left me scarred, but... To kick off the podcast with a funny story, and this is something I've told this a couple of times, not on the podcast, but about 3 days before my VCE Year 12 exam, for those listening in America, basically the high school guitar subject exam, I had a really bad ear infection. I couldn't actually hear out of my right side ear, just had a really bad pain and couldn't have got worse timing. And as I was playing, I'm like, something doesn't sound right. And I noticed this about 2 or 3 days ahead of the exam. Something just wasn't working. And I thought, it just must be my ear infection. Anyway, I come to the exam and I start warming up, and as we set up, and I think there was a lady sitting next to you, Jack, and she sort of yells out and goes, "You probably want to tune up your guitar before you get started." And I'm like, "Yeah, my guitar's in tune. I could do that." Anyway, I do the exam. I play through all the pieces. And, I feel great. I think I played pretty good. And then I get home later that day, or it might even be the next day. I went to tune my guitar and it was completely sharp. And I've gone, that's strange. And then I went and got the acoustic I used and I went to tune that and that was completely sharp as well. And I've gone, oh no. And I went to the bag, got the tuner, I took the exam and it was set to like 456 hertz instead of 440.
Oh, dear.
And I did my whole Year 12 exam in front of you, Jack.
Wow.
At 456, but I got a pretty good mark, so you must have been pretty forgiving.
Well, getting back to what I said before, then maybe I wasn't scarred by it then. So, I don't remember it, but these are the sort of things that, we all have to be aware of. I know that we're going to talk about these things in a minute and what students can do for preparation, et cetera, et cetera. But it's all experience learning and environments, scenarios, and we'll talk about that because it's really important that students get an idea that, it doesn't matter where you're at and what level you're at, things can happen for the good or for the bad, good experiences, bad experiences. And it's a matter of, I think, in our line of work, shall we say, failure is a good thing. You have to look at it as a good thing. Our society doesn't really treat failure in those sort of ways. But for us, working on a musical pursuit, that you have to go through certain things. You have to feel certain things. It can't always be on the up and up and up. It's always got to be a plateau where there's a few little blips, and then there's a spike, and then there's another plateau, and then there's another spike, and the spike can go up or down from those plateaus too. And that's what makes us aware in the end. I mean, I'm sure after that experience, Michael, you would have checked your where your tune has been set. So those sort of things are really interesting and important, and for everyone to learn from those mistakes and not be too disillusioned. But
and very well said about the failures. Like students of mine are always upset about making mistakes, and I say, so what? Like, if you count up all the mistakes I've made, it's going to be 10, doing a group lesson with 6 people in the room. I can guarantee I've made more mistakes than all 6 of you people put together. But the difference between the people who become pros or become really good at it is they're not scared to make mistakes. And when they do make mistakes, they learn from them. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, and you're not learning from it, then that's bad. But if you make a mistake and go, all right, what do I do better for next time? That's how you
yeah, exactly. Oh, totally agree. The thing with the different levels, like beginning level, intermediate, professional, the thing is when mistakes are made at each of those levels, there's a reaction time, I think, that varies all those levels. Like, when I make mistakes, I would like to think that I can adjust them very, very quickly so they're not that noticeable. And because, you've gone through those things before and you know what sort of things you can trigger. But when you're beginning, a mistake can feel like you're in a canyon and you just can't get out of it. And so as you go through your musical paths and progress, if there's certain things that happen, I think we're all got something in us that will create the out switch, like, okay, it's going to happen. That happened, move on. And, the longer you play, you're certain, certain little, not tricks of the trade. It's sort of like your reactional responses to make those mistakes not as audible, and maybe part of the music, which is very important, So that's what makes music so alive and so organic. It's not a computer playing; it's a human being, So it's very important. Those things are always kept in some sort of perspective,
Yeah, 100%. And I think it'd be interesting to hear from your perspective. Like, for the advanced players listening, we'll often be able to count the mistakes that we made and know, song number 3, 26 seconds in, I made a mistake. And then song number 5, 18 seconds in, I made a mistake. And at the end of the show, being like, I played really terribly, everything went really bad. But then you go back and listen to it and you go out for a microsecond before you autocorrect. So
absolutely. Those sort of situations will occur for everyone. It depends on how, what those situations are, what sort of live performances we're talking about. I know a few years back doing, because I've been in that privilege of playing guitar for Carols by Candlelight is, for me, it's a great opportunity. It's a great privilege, but it's also a lot of pressure. And you're trying not to fall into that pressure, but that we're only human. So, because, if you think about it, what I sit back and think about, go, well, you get 2 days rehearsals and then you're playing live in front of an audience of a few thousand, and then there's probably a few million watching it live on air. So it's sort of like things can happen. But I do remember at one point, not revealing any names of anyone I've backed, but I know at a rehearsal which we'd play something and I'm playing something on an acoustic guitar as an introduction for a particular singer, and it's just got a very simple hammer on, to be played. I can't remember what it was. It could have just been an E chord. And I didn't really think twice about it, and just play the rehearsals and it was fine. But I do remember the next tune on the night of the performance and you're in front of that scenario. And I do remember my mind thinking that split moment just before I started playing an introduction, before the conductor brought the baton down, Jack, there's millions out there. Boom, that was it. That was enough to trigger a simple application into what I thought was just, Jack, you stuffed that up really well. But in hindsight, listening back to it, it wasn't so bad, but it was that moment where the brain just kicked in and played, brought everything into that light. These are things that, I've grown from and I've learned from. And so that, like that mental awareness of everything is very important. I'm not an expert at it, but I know that every performance is going to give you challenges. Like I've got a rehearsal to get to later on this afternoon for a show that I'm doing next week. And it's a show that puts me in the spotlight because I'm doing a lot of it's a West Montgomery thing. So I've got to play, fairly well. And I'm trying not to think too many things of, I should do this, I should do that, I should do, or that, what's that person thinking, what's it? I've been through those sort of things before. And the thing is, you just got to be truthful to yourself and play within that zone that we try and get into, but aware at the same time. That's not easy stuff. You can have a student with you for a few years playing stuff in amongst the two of you. You get into a scenario like you just said with an examination, totally foreign. You put that student in a first performance at a concert hall somewhere, totally foreign. They'll learn from it, they'll grow from it, and develop from it. And I'm just fortunate that I try and play as much music as possible with different people, so that that element of, or should I say, both feet are planted on the ground properly. So there's no. It's got to be a firm sort of approach to everything. Like what's coming up, what preparation do you got to do, and practice, and et cetera, et cetera. And without going down to the path of me running an outfit and then do all the organising, I mean, this is totally different sort of discussion there. Being organised and being on top of who you're booking, venues, repertoire, everything else you do to promote. There's that as well. So, there's a lot of stuff later on, and everyone's different with it. Like I do it all myself. I don't have a manager for it. I mean, I'm not at that level, and it's fun and challenging to do a lot of this, and also to try and put, where people are at ease. This is a 9-piece group this afternoon that I'm all, rehearsing and just going through the tunes, and so yeah, that's what's on my mind for today. As soon as we finish this, a bit of warming up, we're going through the tunes, and then go and direct this rehearsal.
Yeah, so you're obviously a very busy man, and we dove straight into this conversation, but how about we just go back a bit and give the listeners a brief overview of your story so far, and of course, right up until when you first started playing guitar, to who you were learning with coming up, to jobs you've had, as well as, musical projects that you've been doing.
Let me, all right, wow. Okay, so I grew up in a family who my father was, he's retired now, but he was a piano player. Dad played piano 5 nights a week. When he came to the country in 1962, a migrant, and he started playing gigs. And Dad made a career out of playing music. He never taught. He maybe rarely taught at home. Piano. He plays accordion, or used to play accordion, and played clarinet too. Self-taught clarinet, but pretty much piano player. So I grew up in that environment. My brother and I, and we sort of were exposed to a lot of music. I just want to put this disclaimer too, that there's a lot of people that don't have that upbringing too. It doesn't. I don't believe it's a huge factor in creating careers or in music. I'm just stating my background. I know a lot of people I know don't have that sort of parent or someone, and they're growing up with music. But in my environment, we always had music at home. There was a lot of records being played, and a lot of musicians that were around. So that was the first inkling of, in the ears of a lot of stuff. And Dad's musical background was semi-classical, Latin music, some jazz, classical music, orchestral, quartet, solo stuff. So I grew up listening to a lot of music, and being of Greek heritage, also grew up listening to a lot of Greek music from our culture, not understanding it. I have to say that's something that's been a lovely pursuit for the last 6-7 years, and actually getting into my cultural background and making more understanding of what it is. But I grew up with that sort of cesspool of music. So that was the first thing. We always had instruments around at home. I mean, I've got some great old photos of me holding little guitars or playing on a little violin, always strumming or doing something. Can't remember what exactly. There was a lot of singing at home. There'd be a lot of Greek parties, because being the first migrants in the country, like, any new migrants, they all get together and sing, and there's a lot of that dancing. So we had that environment. But I started having lessons when I showed an interest in guitar, and I'll just backpedal a bit. We started on piano with my father. It lasted a year with lessons. I love my dad, but as a teacher, it just didn't work. Maybe because it was father and son, I'm not too sure. But both my brother and I started on piano when we were about 9 or 10. It didn't last. It did not last. But we love music. And so I wanted to go and learn guitar because I think at primary school, I picked up a guitar at primary school, and we just had a music teacher showed us some chords, open chords, in a group situation in primary school, grade 4 or 5, I reckon. Anyway, Dad found a teacher for me. So when I was about 11, I went to lessons. Luciano Dalla Riva was my teacher, and I had lessons 6, 7 years with Lou, weekly lessons, right through high school, basically, was my educational musical lessons. He taught me everything from, reading. It wasn't stylistic. It was reading. I still have my first method book, which I got. It's an old 1932's publication for guitar it's the Coles method, Coles, and it's a very old. It's got black and white photos, and he got me reading and started to read proper notation. And one thing led to another because Lou was. Is an interesting background. Lou was a child prodigy classical pianist and self-taught guitar player. So I inadvertently learned from someone who was self-taught on the guitar, but a brilliant mind he had, and he got me through a lot of the fundamentals. Eventually we moved, beyond the guitar, learning about harmony and a lot of that knowledge. And Lou also crept into jazz. This is before I met him. He went into the jazz area and was really taken by that style of music. From classical to jazz, I think there's a very fine connection between the two, and that's another discussion altogether. I think the disciplines are very, very similar. So he got me into that and introduced me to records. Go home and listen to this. Go home and listen to this. And mainly guitar players to begin with. Herb Ellis, Barney Kessel, Joe Pass, Tal Farlow, Wes Montgomery. And of course, those sort of records opening my ears up to Oscar Peterson, Bill Evans, Keith Jarrett, all these other beautiful players, Paul Desmond, saxophone player, Charlie Parker, Lester Young, all that era of jazz. So that's basically I have to say he is the main reason as far as the way I teach and the way I bring myself across to students is pretty much my experiences in those from all that period of time when I had with Lou. I look back and reflect a lot on those times, as much as one can when you're, back at that age. But I do remember very fondly that it wasn't I am the teacher, you are the student type of thing. Although, he was giving me stuff, but it was a lot more relaxed than that. The environment was a beautiful learning environment. And to give you an idea, we started with half-hour lessons. It crept to an hour and a half, 2 hours. My dad would have to drive home and then ring and say, "Can I come pick up my son?" That's how giving he was. With as the years went on, that didn't happen in the first year, but Lou was always, giving me more and more, and and it could even be, let's sit back and listen to this stuff, and we'll put a record on and listen to, or we talk, as much as a 13 or 14-year-old, could discuss music, but having that environment rubbed off on me because, I think it's very important that students with a teacher, be it a mentor or, just that teacher you see, something you can gain from that experience, something that rubs off, whether it's the manner in way the information is given, the way you speak to the student, the way you show examples, because I think, mentoring, you have to inspire as well. You have to show things. You have to demonstrate things. Of course, you have to explain things, write things out, and so forth. But it's all these other factors and your communication skills. If we have to put it all on the one roller, it's like, well, I've got the information. I want to give it to you. How do you do that? And I think my teaching has evolved over the years. I think like when we start teaching, we're very passionate. We want to give everything. And sometimes it's too much. And students are like left wondering what's going on. So you start, I guess, culling to the point where you know when is the right time for that information, for that person, and when is the right time for the next bit of information. So, yeah, I think I learned a lot from Lou with that. And, I got into improvising, doing things, learning jazz standards, chordal melody stuff, because Lou was great in showing me how to put chords and melodies together. And it was a great skill that I use today in my vocational work, where I'll go and do gigs on my own. Like I've got a wedding this Saturday. I'm playing at the ceremony for 2 hours, and it's just me. And they particularly want jazz in the background. And I look back at those times when I was learning. I go, wow, I never knew that. This is where I'm going to head in what I do in music. I just knew that I wanted to play guitar and work at it and get better and better. The vocational thing came a little bit later, teaching guitar, playing gigs. But that background was very paramount in who I am musically today. That initial start with Lou, and very influential in lots of different ways in developing a routine of how I practice, what I should practice, the importance of understanding why I do certain things. Like, why should I do this? What do I get out of that? I think that's important. Not so much for the beginners at right off the cuff, because it's just too much information. You just want to give them a little bit of stuff to get going, and then feed stuff around it, and maybe show them what the finish line is. Like, if you do this, this could be where it's heading, or. So they're really important landmarks for me as far as the teaching side and the learning. But then the gigs are another learning aspect for me, because, from playing music, which I wanted to do, and I started playing gigs with my father in the restaurant scene when I was 14, and it was like, wow, this is great, it's cool, but it was a lot to learn, and I had to try and keep up with the professionals. And we get back to that word failure. Yep. A lot of failure there, especially when Dad would say to me, now we're going to play this tune. It's in the key of E flat. It's only got the 3 chords. Turn your volume down and try and follow. Like 3 chords today, you go, oh, yeah, 1, 4, and 5. I can do that. But, for a 14-year-old, when you're told turn down your volume so you don't make too much of a mess and everyone hears you, just try and follow. That opportunity, you can't buy that. You cannot buy that. You can play along with the YouTube thing and make as many mistakes as possible. No one's going to hear you. You're in your home. You go out in the venue and someone says, right, you're going to play with me now. Just turn yourself down. There are patrons in here, and I just want you to see how you go. I mean, that's like paid. That's fine. Like I have to say, I wasn't getting paid. Obviously, I'm not getting paid for those things. But you understand that environment for me was very, again, a landmark. But I remember Dad saying to me on the drives home from the gig, he'd say, you don't know how lucky you are to be doing this. And I didn't. Yeah. I had no idea. It wasn't until later on I started teaching a tape that I would see students in front of me, over the age of 18 and early 20s, they had never done a gig before. They'd never played these sort of things. And at that sort of moment, it hit home that, right, so what Dad said back then, yeah, it's true. How many chances do you get as a 13, 14-year-old to go out and play in a venue? And just to keep up, and your dad, just saying, at the end of it, he didn't give me too much feedback. I don't know whether he was really listening so much, or maybe I just didn't play loud enough because I was just scared, just trying to follow.
It's a very trial by fire approach, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. And I'm sure if you connect that story to any other industry development, I'm sure there are parallels. I'm sure. Work experience, for example. How many students have done work experience? I did my work experience at a petrol pump. So it's sort of like, what's a mistake can you do at a petrol pump?
But it also comes back to what you said, in the opening sort of lines of this conversation, when you said, you've got to do exams, and that's a new experience, which is often foreign to people, and then you've got to perform, which is a new experience. But if people can get their students playing and practicing from younger ages, so that by the time they're 18, they've done dozens, if not hundreds of gigs or exam type scenarios, it makes a world of difference for their confidence and their ability to perform in a number of different states or under different amounts of pressure and be consistent, whether there's them on their own, one person in the room, or 1,000 in the room. So very lucky to have that experience. And I think this is just me as a younger person, but I always hear like my dad tell me how awesome it was playing around Brunswick and Fitzroy. So he was always a punter. He never played in bands, but talking about how, there'd be a pub on every corner and different bands, every night of the week you'd go and see a live band. So I do think that's something that potentially people are missing out on as musicians these days, is less opportunities, but that's why it's more important than ever to go out and make your own opportunities and get out there and play.
Absolutely. Yeah. Getting on that, like Dad, when Dad came in 1962 and started playing down in an area here in Melbourne called in St Kilda, in Fitzroy Street, where most Melbournians will know. But that place in the 60s and the early 70s, every second place had live music. Now you go down there's no one playing live music, if maybe very few, But it's so true. It's so true. Like you've got to make the opportunities. You've got to network, and moving fast forward and getting myself and an opportunity to teach at an institute, Melbourne Polytechnics, which back then was Northern Melbourne Institute of TAFE, NMIT, in '91. It was an opportunity that I saw students having the chance, if they didn't have, what we're talking about, playing like me playing with my dad, we would give them the opportunity to experience that under controlled environments, whether it's on campus or off campus in a venue. So the TAFE that I work for, a number of TAFEs around the country, that's the whole idea too. It's vocational training, it's VET training, vocational education training, and it's about giving them real life experiences, whether it's on campus or moving performances off campus, to give them, let's give them that taste of what it's like. So fast forwarding, I guess, from that, if you want me to keep going with my development from, early stage of the guitar and then moving into sort of finishing high school and so forth, I ended up working in music shops. Like I started teaching at my first part-time job was at Bernie's Music Land, teaching guitar as an 18-year-old, just part-time, Saturday mornings in a shopping centre, had a music shop in there. And then that crept into a few more hours and days, and Fretted Instruments, which was another well-known Melbourne music store in Brunswick Street in Fitzroy, this one. I'd go and teach there a couple of nights. And then an opportunity came up for me, and I was asked if I would like to teach just one-on-one students at NMIT back then, or Melbourne Polytechnics as it is now. And that was my entry point in that sort of institute. And again, it was a big learning curve, because I finished high school. I didn't go through the so-called normal channels, going through a music college or anything. My background was I wanted to get into VCA, Victoria College of the Arts, in 1985. I wasn't successful. My dad said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, let me go down here. I did a business certificate at TAFE, would you believe, and doing accounting for a couple of years. And it was like wasn't a degree or anything, it was just a certificate, or what you'd record today like an advanced certificate, advanced diploma in business studies and accounting. But during that period, I worked at a music shop. I taught. I started playing gigs, and my early gigs were, function gigs. I used to play with the Italian reception scene, and I got myself involved with Italian bands and playing every weekend. Great experience. They were a lot older than me. They were established. I just had to try and keep up and learn all this stuff. And then started creeping into playing music that I wanted to play. Not that I didn't like playing that stuff, but it was like I wanted to play jazz. I wanted to experience playing jazz, and making contacts, and then You know, I was at a point where I was juggling, reception gigs, certain jazz gigs. I used to do a lot of traveling up in the country areas here in Victoria, Bendigo, Castlemaine, where I used to go and do some playing with some very seasoned jazz musicians and who would accept me, play, and failure and everything, which was really cool. And they gave me opportunity again and again to learn and to play. And 30 years on, I'm still at Melbourne Polytechnics teaching. And when people say to me, what can I do to sort of, how did you do it? Oh, well, I don't know if I want to give you, exactly my path, because that was just my path. It's not a step-by-step method, how I got to where I was. But having said that, in my defense, it all came down to this. Everything came back down to this and my knowledge of playing and learning and music and playing with different people, that I can safely say that where I'm at the moment has been, and always has been, this development right here, So, and it's been great, the lockdown, the COVID lockdown last 2 years, and doing a lot of Zoom lessons. I've been at home. And what you see now around my neck is pretty much what I had every day between Zoom lessons. So this thing was always here. And I was working on things that needed to be worked on. I needed to work on certain things. So it was great. I filled up like 2 journals worth of stuff that I didn't really know, like exercises, little things, little excursions. I do call them musical excursions, just things that I about, but you don't really work on. Like playing your arpeggio, 7 arpeggios in all the inversions. First, second, and third inversions. Like, can you do that, Jack? Oh, not off the cuff. So working on those sort of things, extended arpeggios. So you're playing the arpeggios right through from the 1 to the 13 on every quality of chord and variations. It gave me a lot of things to work on, and they're still kicking my butt, and it's good. I don't know if you can see much behind me, but my music stand behind me has got stuff that's my kick the butt music stand. That's got stuff on it that I work on, and it's always got things on. Always. It's not stuff that. Some things I can play a little bit easier than others, but what goes on there is usually the stuff I need to work on. And behind me there, those piles of stuff is repertoire, basically, with all the gigs that I need to work on, and coming up and so forth. So I keep a healthy balance of keep working on stuff you don't know, keep working on the repertoire you've got to play because the gig's next week or tomorrow, and juggle life and teaching all around that, which, again, it's a routine. It's becomes natural, becomes part of your life. It's normal, My wife's understanding of that.
I was about to ask you a question. I was going to say, you seem to be very, very busy in terms of, you've got all these gigs coming up. You're playing actively, you're teaching. A lot of musicians, struggle. They sort of either fall into, okay, I'm a teacher now, or, I'm a gigging musician and I just do a bit of teaching on the side. So I was about to say, how have you managed to balance everything? But it sounds like the key is having a great wife.
Well, yeah, that's part of it, or should I say having someone who's understanding. That's very important. Or an environment of people who get you, who understand why and what you do. It's very helpful, very, very calming, and it's very, very good on your psyche, very good on your, the things that aren't in your control sometimes. This in some ways is and not in your control. Sometimes you want more control. So you work on it. But that juggling thing, it comes down to, I guess, my upbringing, that I see my father and what he did. He played music. That was his earning income stream. He put food on the table. He paid for us to go through school, public school. I know what he sacrificed for us. So it's important that for me, undertaking this and having it as a lifelong ambition, it is a discipline. It's a commitment, obviously, as well. And I think it's obviously a love and a passion, because if you find it's a chore to put this on or to work on stuff, then I don't know. think it would be very difficult to do what I continue to do, because I find that the music aspect is what breathes life into everything else. The teaching, especially, because my experience of playing music should sort of generate some sort of background to why the student learns something, like a theoretical thing. Why did we learn about chords? Why did we learn about scales? Why did we learn about rhythm? Why do we have to look at that genre of stuff? I mean, if you don't play, then I don't know how, if you're teaching that. And this is just me thinking and talking. I know everyone's got different opinions, but I find that the playing has definitely benefited, helped my teaching, and vice versa. And vice versa. But mainly, it's always been, can I play? Can I do stuff? The juggling thing, really, it just comes down to discipline again. Being organised. Something that I got better and better over the years. Like, I pretty much in advance try and spot things that I need to do. Like just today, I pulled out some gear for the wedding I got to play on Saturday. It's Saturday. Today's Wednesday, and I've got tonight's rehearsal with this West Montgomery. I've got tomorrow night. I've got the big band gig, Darren McKenzie Jazz Orchestra. I play, and it's tomorrow night. Friday night, I've got school bands from Polytechnics performing, so I have to go and supervise and watch that and critique that. Saturday, on the day of the wedding, I've got a session the whole day from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, and then I run from the session to the wedding. Now, that's not something that happens every week, but it's happening, and I know what I've got to do. And it's sort of like, I'm going to pull out my gear. For example, I needed to make sure my extension lead works well. Power extension lead. Now, because I've been told where I'm setting up, the power lead is so long, the PowerPoint. So I know it sounds a little bit over the top, but think of it this way. If I got there on the gig and my power cord's not working and I've got a wedding party waiting for their song to be played and I can't play anything, well, who's going to be left with egg on their face. Those sort of things I know the outcomes to a point. I've got a job to do. It's a responsibility. So to answer your question, I think you've got to be quite strategic. Thank God for our phones and basically your calendars, digital calendars. I mean, I used to write things in my calendar, diary. Sorry, you've got a diary in your phone, mate. Everything goes in there. Everything. If you're going to have a life in music, I think the easiest part is to deal with stuff that is in your control. Stat, mate, you need petrol in the car, you better go and do it today. Because if you're running the gig tomorrow and you run out before you get there, you know what I mean? It's those sort of things. You've got to change strings. You don't do it, on the morning when you're playing, for example, especially on a classical guitar, you put it in. Like I put things in there you'd laugh at. But it's sort of like, change the battery in 2 months' time for that preamp in that guitar. It's stuff for me, it's really important that I get up in the morning and go, okay, so what have I got today? And these things have been put in sometimes weeks before. But I know, like you do when you're opening up your book, you know what's coming up. So you organise yourself. You sort of mentally prepare yourself. This gig that I'm rehearsing tonight, I'm already mentally preparing for it. It's on the end of the month. And what's today? Today's the 23rd. So this gig's on. I'm already mentally preparing for it. Because I'm fronting the band, I've got to talk, let alone play. I've got to talk to the audience. So I'm mentally preparing myself for that. Because, most musicians put a microphone in front of them, except if they're a singer. What do you talk about? What do you tell your audience who've paid good money to come and see you? So it's a responsibility, and these sort of things, they weigh up on me too, because if I don't do my homework and I don't do a good job, it's only number one to blame for all this. It's no one else. But and you learn again from mistakes. You just learn from not being prepared from that last gig. If you didn't make the improvements or make note of it, and it came up again, and you went through the same egg on your face again, it's like, well, what are you doing? Or you're playing that, you're improvising through those chord changes, and you made a meal out of it. It was really bad. Well, next time it comes up, hopefully it's a bit better, wouldn't you think? But it's only a bit better if you've actually taken the time to assess it and do a bit of preparation. It might not be fantastic the next time, but it could be better. Or it's the same, you know. So again, that thing: discipline, responsibility, organizational skills, and looking after your health. Very important. Walking, eating properly, getting enough sleep. Don't indulge in stuff that you shouldn't over the top. Moderation is all good. I mean, I've been very lucky to meet in my life some world-class musicians, world-class. And they are the most humble people I've met as far as professional people. They are people that continually had worked on their craft every day, even being Grammy nominated, they still work on their stuff every day. And it's a lesson, just that, seeing that in front of you. And you go, wow, that person has to work at it every day. And he's done this, 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 this. So what am I doing? Where am I at? I won't practice that. I'll leave it to you. Someone else is practicing more than you at this point when you say that. And not that it should be a competition either. It's just basically, it's about you wanting to develop, if you love it, what's on your table at the moment? What is it? What is it that you're actually trying to tick off? What are your aims? Rambling on a bit, aren't I, Michael?
Oh, I could listen to you talk all day, Jack. There's just so
really?
much wisdom pouring out. The only thing I'm like sitting there going, oh no, when you said you got that big list, well, I absolutely appreciate the organization. I'd love to know more, but I know every single item on that list, there's an embarrassing story or a massive mistake or a big stuff up that caused enough grief for it to become an item on the list. So,
oh man, oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, sometimes the days, I'm just looking through my calendar. Sometimes it's really mundane things, but it could be like I prepare. Like I'll tell you a common one that I do. From my list. Like today, at the end of today, I get my gear ready to put in the car tomorrow for tomorrow night's gig. It's got to be done tonight because I've got to leave early in the morning. So if just to put things in perspective, I've got to go and teach for the day, but I'll leave from the teaching institute to go to the gig. So if I don't have my stuff ready, I ain't going to do it tomorrow morning. When I'm sort of having my cup of coffee and trying to relax and start my day. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to do it at the end of the day. My gear's ready. It's just going to be plopped in the car and I go. Simple things, I know, but I don't want to be, halfway to the gig tomorrow night and go, oh, I forgot, whatever, So that's just conditioning. That's just personal conditioning. And like if you got 2 or 3 gigs a week, which sometimes I may have, kid you not, it's the night before, the gear's getting ready. To go in the car the next day, or if I've got the luxury or I don't have it, the day of teaching, the day after, it's fine. I'll do it that morning and it's ready, and making sure the guitars are in order, the intonation, if there's anything in your strings and so forth, or what effects do I need to take, what amp will I take, which guitars would I take. It's always, maybe I should use my mind more and remember, but I'm a human. I know things are going to happen from day to day, so I write them down. That gig, take that guitar, that amp, that pedal. That next gig is the next day. I'll take that amp and take that guitar and that pedal. I have to break it down sometimes for me. If that resonates with people, good. Maybe you can get into it. If you get busy and busier, maybe try and think of adjusting a few of your ways to do it.
Fantastic. Well, Jack, I am conscious of the time that we do have, and I know you've got a rehearsal to duck off to. So perhaps if we could just go back to you working at Melbourne Polytechnic and having some involvement with obviously the screening process and the audition process, would you have any advice to advanced players who do want to become professional musicians and go down the path of auditioning and going to music school?
Yeah. Firstly, with the audition process, the recommendation and the advice I give to anyone auditioning is to be yourself. That's number one. Meaning, musically, be yourself. Like, if you come in and audition in front of any one of us, I think for anyone, it's really nice to be able to hear someone express themselves, whatever instrument, naturally as possible. Not something that you learned during the week that you really find you think it's going to impress, and you're struggling and you're stressed because you can't perform it properly. So have a think about it. Things that you can play well, you can communicate musically well to whoever you may meet in an audition. That's a big piece of advice I can give to anyone. For our auditions, we sort of ask for two contrasting pieces. Contrasting can mean many things. It can mean, that guy just plays one style. Okay, well, two different tempos. Give me, if it's a rock thing, give me a rock ballad and give me something. Oh, if they can play two different styles, terrific. Or, classical piece and electric piece, that's fine. So I think the other big reason people get into institutes like that, besides getting qualifications, it's networking, because you're going to have a pool of people at the same place where, you think they all would be thinking the same thing. It's all music, or it's guitar. That's not a bad thing, So I know over 30 years there have been lots of students who have made connections and friendships with people that are continuing today and play music because of their connection and their introductions in these courses. And they just click with someone or click with a number of people. That's a really cool thing. Obviously, making a career out of music, well, that's a big area of what does that mean. So, does it mean you want to, try and maybe go down and get qualifications to teach in high school? Well, that could be that path. And TAFE is a great jumping way to get there. I shouldn't use the word jumping because normally through TAFE you've got to go and do your degree and so forth. We've got a lot of ex-students who are running music departments, around in our areas, in our northern suburbs. And it's really fantastic to see. So they're making their careers by getting involved in certain high schools or whatever, and playing music. The point I want to make too about if with a career, I mean, we're talking about an income stream too. So that again, a career is one that hopefully you love doing, but it's also one that pays the bills, puts the food on the table. Educate your kids, or whatever else your situation is. So it's sort of like you've got to think it through. If you're going to do and commit to some sort of educational thing, be it our course, a TAFE course, or the degree course, where is it all heading? And have you looked into the outcome? Like, where do you think it will end up? Because if it's teaching, then there are areas that you can move into. If it's playing, then that's a totally different thing. As you know, Michael, you've really got to set your own, well, not your own, but you've got to be, it's very difficult to be, what's the word? When you start playing, you've got to just play anything and everything that comes your way until you can be selective. This is my thinking. Like I still do things. I love doing all sorts of things, but in the beginning, I took on everything that I could possibly play. Like that reception thing. You tell me, I mean, it just came my way, and I thought, well, it's not something I wanted to do, but it's playing, and I'm learning, and I'm thankful that I did it. I learned a lot of experiences. So, the teaching thing is one thing and one career stream where a lot of people go down that and they have some fantastic careers and motivate and inspire lots of students to in music and beyond, and have music as a love in their life. The playing side, well, I think anyone can start that if they've got, fundamentals having. You can go out and do some busking. You can put a group together. If you're at a high level, try and play some venues that you aspire to play at, get involved and write music. And so there's nothing stopping you from doing that. I mean, this is the just the way our industry is, like, no, the Beatles didn't go through an institute, they went for an institute, but it wasn't an educational one that you and I know. They just went for a whole different area of stuff and playing music and learning off each other. And that's how they got their craft together. But so I really advise the playing it's got to be there, I believe. And I don't care if you're playing at your local pub, on the corner somewhere, on TV, in a studio, it doesn't matter. You've got to get involved and play music, make people happy with what you're doing, which I'm hoping to do with this wedding thing I'll play on Saturday. It's something that I'm sure hopefully generate a smile, and that's wonderful profession to be in. It's not an accounting profession. It's not, it's you're not sitting there on the desk. You're giving, whether you're teaching, you're playing, it's giving. So I think there are really important things to consider when we talk about a career and in our industry.
Fantastic. And normally I have a question about, if you can impart one little bit of advice on the listeners here, what would you say? But I think that the last little bit of that sentiment was summarize that up. But my one final question for you, Jack, because I know you've got to go and I've got to go too.
Sure.
For people who want to go and do music, whether it's study it at a school, whether it's becoming a classroom teacher, or people who want to go out and be a rock star and professional musicians, but their parents and loved ones are saying, no, don't do it. You can't make any money. You need a day job, or you need to have a plan B. What's your advice in those scenarios?
Wow, that's a very common one and scenario we find a lot of students, a lot of people in. My advice, you got to follow your heart. That's number one first. Like the same thing I said earlier. My father didn't want, well, maybe I didn't say it. I probably said it to someone else. My father didn't want my brother and I to make careers in music, and because he knew how hard it was. But deep down, my brother and I knew that that's what we wanted to do, and that's coming from a father who was a career musician. So we did it, but I guess in ways I had to prove, without being on a psychiatrist's couch here, I had to prove that I could do things to sustain myself, earn a living, and it was all in music though. That's the thing. I'm working in a music retail environment. I was selling instruments. I was teaching, and then I was also in the back of my mind wanting to play more. Sometimes you just got to show people who maybe not understand. I think you just got to show them what you do. That's one thing, like play. Sit them down and just play. If you're really passionate about what you do and they can see it when you're doing it, that speaks volumes for a start. I don't think any parent or any friend who sees you pouring your heart out playing something, you're going to say, hey, you know what, Joe, I reckon you should go and do something else. I think that's, if you can win one person, man, you're doing great. Forget about winning a room or winning an audience. Just win that one person and show that you are disciplined to do that. Show that you're willing to put the effort in. Show that you're willing to understand what it all means. Because career in music is not easy. It's not easy. You got to juggle a lot of things. So show the passion and show that you enjoy what you're doing. Because you and I know there's lots of people out there who don't like getting out of bed to go and do their work for the day, because it's just too hard, man, the chore, whatever that may be. But, I love it. I get up in the morning, I practice. I get up in the morning, I go to school, I go and teach. I come home, there's music on. It is a wonderful privilege too, not to be taken lightly, because there are people well worse off than you and us doing things that they don't like doing. So here we are. I got this around my neck. What a joy! So if you show that to people, especially parents, I think, and it's going to be a hard sell. I mean, either way you look at it, it's a very hard sell. But show that you're committed. Give them, get your ammunition together, man. Show that if you're paying for your own lessons, for example, I don't know, you're earning money to pay for your lessons to do stuff. I'm sure any parent would look at that and go, "Wow, look at the effort that kid's going to," because they love that. And then it's a joint thing between the parent and the child to discuss and maybe discover what does the career paths look like. Can we chat about it? Can we find out about it? Can we go and talk to people about it? I mean, I can't tell you how many parents I've spoken to, especially young students who come to tape, who say to me, "So what's my kid going to get out of this?" Wow, okay, let's sit down and have a chat. Because obviously they don't know. They have no idea. And, when you get that comment, you're already up against the negative straight away because you can feel it. So it's like, whoa. So I go through personal story. I go through stories of students that have gone on, talk about our industry in general, and so forth. I mean, I just came across, again, no names, but a very good young up-and-coming guitar player whose career is going off in a beautiful tangent, that had to make sacrifices with teaching. So that person can tour because that's what they love doing. The teaching will always be there in some aspects, but maybe the touring won't be. Everyone's different, So I just chatted with that person yesterday. Great stuff, And this person wasn't a student of mine, by the way. Someone I've come across over the last few years, a young and upcoming, beautiful player, and we chat about things. And I've actually given this person a couple of my gigs in the past to do, because I know they've got the skill, the reading skills, and everything else. And it's really, for me, it's inspiring. I said to this person yesterday, you're inspiring me from what you're doing. It's great. So getting back to your question, try and show the love and the commitment and the passion, and hopefully you've got an ear on the other end who's going to sympathetically listen to you, and then maybe, okay, well, let's work this out together. Because what you said too, Michael, that's a very common thing. Parents, especially if they don't come from a musical background, they're very wary of it. They're sort of brainwashed with what they hear in the industry anyway. It's lifestyles, et cetera. Yes, So you can imagine any worrying parent going, "Well, I don't know if I want little Johnny to be going down that path." But I know that from my experience and a lot of my colleagues, professionalism means professionalism. It's not amateurish. It's not hobbyish. You can leave that for some other venture. But professionalism means you've got to do a number of things. And so all these things that we spoke about today, it does cover a level of professionalism that, you can hold yourself up in any environment, come across and do the best you can, and fail. Pros fail all the time. I do. So it's sort of like, go ahead and do things, and pick yourself up, fix them up, improve, get better for the next gig, et cetera, et cetera. I hope that helps. Some sort of things.
Very, very helpful to me hearing this, and I'm sure all the listeners as well. Now, lastly, I feel like we've just scratched the surface, and I could listen to you talk for hours, Jack. I just think there's so much we could talk about, but unfortunately, we do have to wrap it up. Where can the listeners find out more about you?
Oh, cool. Wow. Lockdown's been great because, little Jack here got his website happening, which is fantastic. Finally. So I developed a website. You can find me easily on jackpantazis.com. So Jack, Jack, Pantazis.com. I've uploaded a lot of things. My music, I've got 2 CDs out. Hopefully later in the year I'll go and do a third one, because I think 12 years has been enough of a hiatus, really. And all the gigs, there's an events page there. There's some downloads, free downloads. There's some arrangements, some guitar tunes for solid guitar that you can download. All the music from the first CD. The second one you can listen to, and there's a link where you can purchase it. Yeah, I'm happy with it. And a lot of links to things that I've done in my career and with different people, YouTube stuff and all sorts of stuff in that. So, and you can send me, I'm available for lessons. People can write into me. Any questions, I'm open in regards to music and guitar and career choices. I'll try and answer if I can. But there's a contact page there, and they can just write to me, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Fantastic. So if you're listening at home or you're watching on the internet, go to Jack's website, hit him up. He's an absolute wealth of knowledge and experience. And Jack, thank you so much for coming on the Top Music Guitar podcast, and we'll look forward to having a chat to you soon.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Anytime.
Oh, there we go. You can play us off. Guys, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next episode of the podcast. Thanks once again. If you enjoy this show and want to hear more of our work, be sure to subscribe to this podcast. For links and resources mentioned in this episode, including a free ebook on how to find more guitar students, visit us at www.topmusic.co/guitar or check out the show notes. And lastly, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.